This is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we're chatting with Edgar Diaz of Sightline Provisions about Sightline Provisions, his love for fish, his passion for conservation, and his interest in destinations, both in his backyard and throughout the world. Let's chat with Edgar. Okay, we're here with Edgar Diaz of Sightline Provisions. Edgar, welcome to the Venturing Angler Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim.
I hesitated as I was introducing you because one of the things that came to mind right away was when we met for the first time. You told me that when you were on long drives, you were listening, and I remember loving to hear that. And so I don't know if you'll listen to this one, but welcome to the podcast. Um,
Well, thanks for having me. I really do appreciate it. Definitely a long way since we first met back in, I think, 2016 at IFTD.
Yep, exactly. And I had just purchased a Sightline Provisions bracelet and loved it, and was happy to see you there. And I've been a customer for years, and but I recently listened to a different podcast that you were a guest on, and I thought the story of how everything came to be was an interesting one, and I thought it'd be worth having a conversation here and talking more about that. For those who didn't listen to the other podcast, what is Sightline Provisions, and then how did it come to be?
Yeah, well, so Sightline Provisions was basically a brand that was born in late 2015. I was on a trip to Wyoming and to Idaho. And at the time, I was doing art festivals. So I was going and applying to I was applying to art festivals all over the country. And these are juried art festivals. And at the time, I was making a line called Vintage Wear. And this was leather cuffs that were featuring not outdoor, but old antique designs. So I would take an original antique and then build a cuff around that piece. And so as I went to shows all over the country, I would sell them at these art festivals. And I had a handful of shops that carried my work as well. But one of the things I really struggled with was you had this amazing piece, and once you sold it, it was done. I could replicate them, and I did replicate some of the old antiques, but for the most part, it was it just was a lot of work to be driving around the country and doing these art festivals. And I had been doing it for about 15 years at that time. And so I kind of thought, why not? I can make my own designs and then kind of create a more simpler leather cuff or bracelet that can have that piece sit on top of it. And so that's kind of where I started really to think of what I possibly could do to design that. And um, that was kind of like the beginning of Sightline. And being that I was on this trip, I was fly fishing. I in Colorado on the frying pan, and then I was able to go up to Silver Creek in Idaho. It was and then ended up at actually came back home and then had to bring my truck. I drove from Wyoming back to Denver, parked my truck, and then flew my family back up, and we went to Wyoming again to Yellowstone Park, and that's where it kind of dawned on me that I could really make an amazing brand, kind of like centered around the fact that the things that are in your sight line, things that are in your vision when you're in beautiful places like that, uh, would be would be pretty kick-ass to be able to do something like that. And that's how I started Sightline Provisions, is with this idea. And luckily, I already had all uh, my equipment because of my cuff making business, and I just literally hit the ground running and um, and began to make these pieces. One of the things that happened in um, in Wyoming was, and I'm not going to really name any names, but I had an introduction, or I had someone come into my booth at an art festival that worked with a national retailer, and this person loved my vintage wear cuffs, and she really loved them. She bought like four of them, and then when I found out who she was, I had told her that I had an idea for an outdoor line, and I showed her the outdoor line, the concept, and she freaked out and she said, "This is awesome. When you're ready to show and come to market, then send me an email." And then once I sent her that email, once I made my first collection of six pieces, she forwarded it to the buyer for for this uh, this retail this retailer, and I ended up having an appointment 2 weeks later with that buyer. And to kind of make a long story short, that experience wasn't very good. It didn't work out.
Mm.
Um, I went from thinking that I was going to be able to access and sell to, 80 stores plus. Ended up being maybe five stores, and it was like 6 months down the road, and I just at that time I didn't have the time to really wait around. So I decided to just build my retailers one by one. And on the way back to the airport, I it was about 4 hour drive to the airport. I had taken my wife up with me, so we were pretty excited. So as we're driving to the airport, I'm very deflated and really bummed out. I decided to call on a fly shop near the airport, and walked into the store. Showed my bracelets to the guy, the kid at the counter, and then the kid at the counter went and got the owner out of the back, and he came back out, and he looked at me and said, "These are really cool." And I thought, "Oh, thanks." And he knew where I was previous to him, because he knew I was flying out, because I told him I was flying out. And he basically kind of put two and two together and said, "Well, I really like these pieces, and if you're not going to be working with them, I'd like to carry this collection." And he bought like 140 pieces on the
Oh,
spot,
wow.
and it just changed my whole my whole day. The day went from super high, super excited, to just a kick in the nuts, going, "Oh my god, this is terrible. I can't believe I just drove up here for this." And then to get on a plane, I was already flying pretty high. I was really excited, because in that moment I realized I can build my brand one shop at a time, specifically fly shops, because I love to fly fish, and I had been fly fishing for about 13 years prior to that. And so it just gave me an excuse to go to fly shops and talk to fly shop owners and travel a little bit. And that's how Sightline started. And yeah, it's definitely been a, a pretty big undertaking by myself and my family and friends that have supported me, but it's been really cool. I've been really enjoying it.
It's amazing. I didn't realize that it really did come out of a fly fishing trip, or a trip to special places where there is a lot of fly fishing and there's an abundance of outdoors riches. And so the fact that it came out of that's pretty cool. What type of work were you doing? What type of art were you doing prior to Sightline Provisions?
Well, in 1994, I made my first art piece, and it was a paper sculpture that I made for my wife. Well, my future mother-in-law at the time. So my wife obviously was my girlfriend, and I wanted to really impress her. And I was just graduating college, and I kind of just made this piece of art that I had no idea I can do, and she didn't really know I can do it. And so when I gave it to her mother for her birthday, like the whole family was freaking out. Like, you made this? And I said, yeah, I made that. I went to the art supply store and I bought some paints and a frame, and this is what I did. And it was a low relief paper. I mean, it wasn't necessarily paper sculpture; it's more like paper assemblage, and it's like layering uh, paper in different ways, and then doing like a shadow box effect. And so other family members said, for my birthday, I want one of those. I was like, all right, it's cool. It's going to save me some money. And I started making them for family and friends. And if, like, as the story goes, for many people, they just started kind of like picking up commissions here and there. And I started selling my artwork while pursuing a career in social work after I'd graduated college. And so I just started doing the artwork as a part-time, kind of like a fun money type stuff, making some money here and there. And then I had a big break where I had a client who commissioned 100 pieces for their business that they were going to give my artwork as a corporate gift. And that gave my wife and I enough money to put a nice down payment down on a house in Orange County, California, very ahead of our scheduled plan. And we had, to buy a house back in '96 was still a big step. But from '96 to '97, the market just shot up. So we got in right as the market shot up, like we were literally in escrow. And that kind of, now to buy a house in California for what we paid for in that neighborhood, it's just not available. Um, so I started doing artwork full time in 2000, and I was making these wall pieces that were paper sculpture, and then I started incorporating aluminum cans. So I would get an aluminum can, and I would cut it open and use the silvery side as the front of the piece, and then the colored side, the colorful side, would be on the back of it. So I started making cityscapes, so buildings and female form and floral pieces, and these were all shadow boxed. And I started doing art festivals, and that's how I made my living uh, from 2001 on. And in 2010, I started making these leather cuffs that were antique based, like I talked about earlier. So I've worked with a lot of different mediums, and all the mediums I've worked with are kind of not necessarily your normal or traditional ways of creating art. And that's always been kind of like my thing. I don't know why. I think part of it is I don't think I have a certain amount of talent that I can't really draw, but I've got a way to kind of build and create artwork from existing pieces and kind of give it my own style. Like, I can't draw very well, but I can cut with a pair of scissors pretty well. I can make a paper sculpture, birds of paradise piece in like an hour with scissors and white paper, and it'll look really elegant and beautiful. And you put that in a shadow box, and it looks great. But to draw that, I'd probably have probably be difficult for me.
Interesting.
So that's my background.
So, from what were your first pieces for Sightline Provisions?
So my first pieces were a trout, which I still have in the catalog today. Um, it's kind of a top view of a trout. I did an elk. I did a bison. I did a bear, and then there's one more. I'm blanking out. A moose. So I did kind of like the outdoor designs, and ironically, there was only one fish in that initial collection.
But it sounds inspired by, Yellowstone and,
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, I was literally standing there right when you leave Jackson. There's this really nice spot. It's a scenic over, like you could pull off the road, and you could see the Tetons right there in front of you. That's where I kind of had the like that epiphany, like, I should make I should make some piece because I was blown away personally by everything I was seeing in Jackson, and that was just in Jackson, not even Yellowstone, but that whole big sky country just really it kind of overtook me, and I thought, why don't I'm going to make designs that are going to kind of reflect this inspiration. And so yeah, that's why you see those pieces being like the first five or six that I started with.
There's no shortage of fish now. You've really jumped into a number of species. What is it a passion for these species? What drives you to go into new territories when it comes to these designs?
I think part of it, for the most part, was excitement. Once I kind of got my foot in the door in the fly fishing um, marketplace, obviously people are always going to come to you and say, you should do this. What about this? I would really like to see that. And as almost like the new kid at school, yeah, you're excited. You're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do this. And no matter how obscure or niche or niche that species is, I was just excited you know, to be doing what I was doing. So I did get, I did get really, uh, I believe I kind of went overboard where I started making every species in the first 2 years
Mhm.
because it just seemed like, okay, this is cool. Like, okay, I'm gonna do, um, I don't know, I'm trying to think of kind of an obscure species a fish that isn't necessarily like okay, carp. I mean, who knew there would be a carp bracelet? But I made it. Now, carp, there's a lot of people that are passionate about it. I personally haven't caught too many of them, but when I've caught them, it's been really interesting and really fun. Um, but it's not like what you would consider like a glamour species, like a tarpon or a bonefish or a trout. Uh, but I've kind of opened up the catalog to a lot of different fish from, king salmon to Atlantic salmon to bluegill and into the Rio Grande cichlid here in Texas. That, it's more of a regional fish. So I have made a lot of designs. Now, they all come in seasonally because I can't keep that catalog going all the time. And so when summer starts coming around, I'll start kind of ordering some of the bluegill and cichlid pieces. But I think I think ultimately it's because I was excited to be part of something that people loved. And when you're talking to fishermen and fly fishermen specifically, they're really passionate about that fish that they love to chase. So,
Yeah,
um,
I was with a friend once who was wearing a necklace with a permit on it, and
mhm.
for her, she'd never caught one, and so she wore it so that it would, keep her focused on, her dream of catching that fish. Do you find that you get people who want to wear, for example, a trout piece because they love trout, but also might, might wear a bracelet, for example, because of ambitions that they have?
For sure, both sides too. I get guys that are like, I'm never wearing a permit bracelet until I catch one, and I'm like, well, you might never wear one, and I personally have lived through that where um, in 2017 I made my first GT bracelet. That's a giant trevally, and I had never seen one like in person. I knew what they were, uh, but it wasn't something that I ever thought I'd get the opportunity to chase. But I still wore it because it's like this, like yeah, like you said, like in my opinion, it's almost aspirational, or it's like you keeping that eye on the prize type thing. It's on your wrist. It might drive you to like save more money so you can do that bucket list trip to a location where you can actually catch a certain fish. And in 2019, I got the opportunity to go fish and travel to Dubai and fish with Nick Bowles with Ocean Active Fly and chase a queenfish, um, which was all. runs an amazing operation there. Then I was able to travel to from there to Alphonse Fishing Company, and that's in the Seychelles, where it's like Disneyland for saltwater. I mean, it's just incredible. And I was able to go and catch, three giant trevallies,
Wow.
and they might not have been the biggest ones, but I mean, it was just incredible to be there and actually cast to one and really feel that power and just, it was like if you would have told me I'd be going to the Seychelles to go fish for GTs, I would have thought, if you would have told me that 4 years ago, 5 years ago, even 3 years ago when I went, I would have been, like there's no way. It's just out there. But um, I had a great opportunity because of my business. I did a trunk show in Dubai, which was a first, obviously, and then I did a trunk show there at Alphonse Fishing Company, and it was so successful, and it was such a great opportunity, and that Keith runs an amazing program there, and um, and so I felt very very lucky, but part of that was kind of the buildup of always wanting to do that. And then when that opportunity kind of presented itself because of my business, it was like it was a dream come true to go do that. And so I've lived that moment of wearing a bracelet because you want it to be reality one day. And and then I've seen other people that are like, I'm gonna wait till I actually catch something to wear it, which is totally fine. I don't ever want to pressure anyone to buy anything from me if they don't want it. And so yeah, that's my take on the bucket list or the aspirational side of wearing my work.
Yeah. And then outside of fishing, you've got a number of designs too.
Yeah, so a lot of people that have been introduced to Sightline, they look at it as a fishing brand, as a fly fishing brand, and it truly is an outdoor brand. I mean, that's how I started. We do have a large selection of outdoor inspired designs and even upland hunting inspired designs. So we'll have well, I did a piece called Tectonic Rush, which is based off the Tetons. Um, we've got an arrow design. We've got
I've got both of those.
yeah, we got the bear, which you're familiar with,
Yep.
um, and then an elk antler,
I've got that one too.
which yeah, yeah. So we do other things other than fishing. It's just like I said, it's been kind of a whirlwind over the past 6 years where I had to find an entry point into the outdoor marketplace. And I was really lucky that I loved to fly fish because it just made everything so legitimate and sincere. I wasn't just making things to sell things. I was making them to actually, because I actually love doing, I love fly fishing. Like even the upland hunting, I started doing those 2 years ago when I was introduced to upland hunting over at Spoke Hollow Outfitters here near my house in Austin. And I didn't want to just make things for the sake of making things. And as I have grown in that sport of upland hunting, I've started to see and wanting to create more pieces that really spoke to me as a new hunter and and have a sincere connection to that sport rather than just again making things to make money, which isn't bad. Believe me, that's why I do what I do. But I feel very lucky that I'm able to have a connection to it rather than just making stuff to make money.
In both in all of these areas of interest, you've got things like Yeti cuffs, rings, a variety of other things. One,
Yeah. So, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and related to Upland, one of the things that stands out in particular is these shotgun shell holders, which are pretty cool. They
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
grace the stock of a shotgun, and it just looks so classy and appropriate for Upland.
Yeah. Yeah. And those obviously they're not something new. There's a lot of shell holders and bullet holders out there, a lot of talented people that make those. And but the way, when I make mine, it's featuring a badge, and I'm really almost really invested in them, and they're kind of hard for me to make because I have to, make them all individual. And but I still offer them on the website. And we do have like silver jewelry. I started making rings in 2019, or it might have been 2019. We started making silver cuffs in 2019 as well. Um, and then those have evolved into the Forged collection, which I started during COVID uh, in 2020, where I started creating these one of a kind, high end silver cuffs with our existing designs, but then I would layer the cuff with other silver pieces and textures. And they've been very popular. I've been really surprised. I didn't really know that the market was there for a 350 and plus market for silver cuffs, and it's been really fun to make those and kind of really get creative with them. And so yeah, and then we have the Yeti cuffs, which are kind of obscure, kind of a weird, like a way to sleeve up your Yeti Rambler, your 20-ounce Yeti Rambler. Um, and those have been great too, because we did end up doing a collaboration with Yeti in 2019 with those pieces for the flagship store here in Austin. And we still carry them on our website as of now. So I try to create different accessories, and we've got more accessories on our product roadmap that I'm always adding to. So I would say 2022, 2023, definitely keep an eye out. We're gonna be expanding um, our sight line.
Nice.
It's very corny, but that feels
No,
appropriate.
that's cool. Earlier you mentioned trunk shows, and you have a variety of different events, if you will. Some are virtual, some are in person. How can you describe these events for those who aren't familiar?
Well, traditionally, a trunk show is an artist or a jeweler that's coming to a location, whether it be one of their existing shops or retailers, or it could be, I've had them at bars. I had a one at a bar in Columbus, where you show up, you kind of rent out an area, and you set up your display, and you've got pieces that aren't necessarily always available on the website. And I like to make them special so that people feel like, okay, they're not just coming to see what I usually show on the website, but they're coming to see things that they may see on the website, or they may not. So it adds more of a special take on the trunk show. So I've done it with retailers. We've done them at Fly South, Fly Shop in Tennessee. We've done it down in Seven Mile Fly Shop in the Keys. And so prior to COVID, it was just a great way to get out there and kind of meet people that followed you and like your work and have purchased your work. And it's always a nice event, especially for our retailers, because it's just something that we can do to add to our collection and make people excited about what we're doing. Um, and so when COVID happened, we decided, well, at the time, I had kind of a panic moment right in late March when everything started shutting down, just like everyone else did. Didn't know what was going on, didn't know what the future was going to be like. And I saw a lot of our fly shops closing down, or not closing down, but shutting down. And just like every other business, everyone needed to kind of close their doors while we dealt with the pandemic, at least initial beginnings of the pandemic. And so that's where the virtual trunk show was born. And what I did was, I knew that personally I was scared, didn't know what was going to happen with my business. And I knew that there were other business owners that were in the same boat. So what I did was I created the virtual trunk show, in that I would do a trunk show on my website and then connect it to a specific shop for one day. And that one day, we would share up to 50% of our sales with that retailer, with that fly shop, or with that outdoor outfitter. And we did about 24 of them, 25 of them.
Wow.
And it was really successful. It was, well, I was more relieved because I was able to keep my doors open, and keep my assistant employed. And I didn't, because I really thought I was going to have to like close down for a little bit and kind of regroup. And it was like the opposite. We were so busy making product for our online trunk shows, because we, like, in that those 25 shows we did in about a 2 month stretch. And there were times where I mean, I'd back to back every day, and it was just kind of grueling for me because I had to take the website down, put it with the new retailer that we're doing a trunk show with, stay up till 12, transition it, and then stay up to 12 the next day and transition it. And it was just like, it was a lot of work. But at that time, I was running on so much adrenaline and fear that I can't let anything kind of slip through the cracks. That it was pretty amazing. And a lot of our retailers, I mean, we paid out. I don't remember how much we paid out, but it was, I think it might have been 35 or $40,000 that we paid out to retailers and nonprofits that we worked with during that time. And that was money that we were sending them as this was our partnership. They promote Sightline to their people, and then we provide those people with a place to go buy product that would help that specific retailer. And it was really, really cool. So,
You mentioned nonprofits, and I would say that the themes of the Venturing Angler podcast are fish and fishing destinations, and then environmental issues. You seem to be as equally interested in protecting places as you are anything else. What drives this, and what are some of the ways you've been able to use sightline provisions to hopefully protect wild places?
well, I mean, just like everyone out there, at least most everyone, if you really enjoy the outdoors, I think we all have a responsibility to do what we can to protect, or at least keep people in check with what they're doing. You I think we all have the responsibility to just keep an eye out on what's going on with environmental issues that affect our waters, our outdoor spaces. And I guess for me, when I first started Sightline, I didn't think about this stuff, but I still had the social work background that would drive a lot of my decisions as I
Mm-hmm.
grew as a company. And as I grew as a small brand, I started seeing that, well, I've got a little voice, and I can do what I can to really make make people think twice, maybe, about environmental issues that'll affect their favorite river that they fish at, or their favorite beach that they go and hang out at. And so I really started to work with nonprofits like IndieFly. They were one of my first nonprofit partners, and I would create pieces and then sell them on the website, and then donate 100% of that sale to that nonprofit. Because at the time, and even to this day, I don't really have the money to go drop $1,000 or $2,000 to give to a nonprofit, but I could sell $1,000 worth of stuff and have
Right.
them share in that. And that's become kind of the model that I've done with working with nonprofit organizations, um, like the Mayfly Project, and Captains for Clean Water, uh, you know, Bristol Bay, No Pebble Mine, Bristol Bay. And those relationships have grown, and it's become part of my culture as a brand to always have those be part of my years, my plan. And in terms of growing the brand itself, and then also helping um, our outdoor, basically helping preserve things that out in the wild, and making sure that we kind of live up to that responsibility to, if we're making money from the outdoors, that we at least give back to try to help uh, nature, and also help other people experience the outdoors in a responsible way. So
Terrific.
hopefully I answered your question. I think
No,
I
it's,
rambled a little bit
no,
on
that's good. I'm glad you explained it as much as you did. Um, you mentioned the Seychelles earlier, and that's as far away as it gets, and I think you've been to Argentina too. But you
that.
also love fishing for bass and cichlids in your neck of the woods. What are some of the places you've been able to go, and what are some of the favorite things you like to do when it comes to fishing?
Oh man. Well, like, yeah, I've been very, very fortunate that I've been able to visit places like Jurassic Lake. Llewellyn and Carlos, they've got a great, great operation down there at Jurassic Lake Lodge, and that was an amazing place just because of the starkness of it and the remoteness. Even though the Seychelles, you're like literally on an atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean, was pretty crazy too. But those experiences were life changing, because as much as I love to go fish for my local uh, largemouth bass in a little creek, 15 minutes away from my front door, um, that traveling traveling to places that you've never been to, or even if you've been to it once, going there just seems so amazing again. That's pretty special. But my favorite places to go are literally going to my creek here, and being shin deep, and casting poppers to, Guadalupe bass or largemouth bass, and then occasionally you get a cichlid hit a popper, and that's
Mm.
pretty cool. But you do that on a 3-weight or a 4-weight on a July afternoon, and there's no one around you. That's one of my favorite feelings that I'm able to replicate as much as possible. But I'm not gonna lie, chasing down a GT on the flats, and running through coral and trying not to get your legs all shredded, while trying to maintain balance, and then casting a 12 weight to a marauding group of GTs. that's pretty
That's
that's
pretty
a
cool.
whole different level. That's a whole different level of fishing, that um that takes a lot of work. uh so there's a different satisfaction to it, because when I did have that experience of chasing down a school of GTs from like what seemed to be a quarter mile away, and then connecting with that fish and bringing it to hand, and holding it, and realizing like, wow, I can't believe I just did that. That's a whole lot of exercise and cardiovascular that you don't do when you're sitting, when you're wading in a small creek, casting to a rising fish, or casting to a corner where you think there's a fish waiting to ambush something. That's a different type of vibe. But I've been really lucky to, I guess I love fishing, period. I don't
Yeah,
really have any
yeah,
specific favorites, just favorite moments.
yeah. It's what you can make of the experience. I remember it's a long time ago. I was working at the San Jose Fly Shop, and my buddy Brent and I went fishing, and he had like a one weight or something, and was catching these. I don't even remember what he was catching, and I've never seen anybody excited about any fish as these,
Yeah.
3-inch whatevers. It's you can have all the glory from cichlids in Texas to GTs. Um, well, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about Sightline Provisions?
Well, they can go to my website, sightlineprovisions.com. They can they can hit me up on Instagram at Sightline Provisions, and Facebook, which is Sightline Provisions. And you know what? I always let people know, they can always call me too. You know, the website, the Instagram, the Facebook, they've all got my contact information. I get people calling me or calling the phone number, and then I answer, and they're just like, I didn't think I didn't know you'd answer the phone. I'm like, well, that's me. That's my business. That's how I run it. Especially when I have someone, maybe someone's buying something special for the the fly fisherman or fly fisher woman in their lives. It's always nice to kind of go over some of the things, some of the options that we have. Or if there's an issue with one of our bracelets or an issue with something that they bought, I always try to make sure that we resolve everything. And because what we create, they're made out of leather. They're not bulletproof. We have people wearing them all over the world, whether it be in salt or fresh water. Um, and there's always going to be some times where pieces are going to fail over time because of the way they're kind of beat down. Um, we have a rebuild program on the website, so uh, people can send in their current piece, and then we'll rebuild it for them at a lower price than they will for a brand new piece. That's so people can keep that special piece going. But yeah, I'm available all the time. I work all hours of the day, and I do my best to make sure that my customers, my clients are always taken care of. So I hope that answered your question.
Definitely, that's great. Well, Edgar, this was overdue. I've been wanting to have you on for a while. I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me on.